In the summer of 2023, Emma Caldwell, an experienced hiker and nature enthusiast, set out on a solo journey through the dense forests of Glacier National Park in Montana. The trip was meant to be a reprieve from the chaos of her demanding urban life, a chance to reconnect with nature and clear her mind. Emma was meticulous in her planning, researching the trails, packing the necessary gear, and informing friends of her itinerary. But even the most prepared adventurers are not immune to the unpredictability of the wild. Emma chose a remote trail that meandered through towering pines, crossed babbling streams, and climbed to a secluded alpine lake. The route was challenging but manageable, and Emma felt confident in her abilities. She carried bear spray, a whistle, and a first aid kit, her pack carefully balanced to ensure she could move efficiently. On her second day, Emma reached a stunning meadow surrounded by jagged peaks. The air was crisp and alive with the hum of insects and the distant calls of birds. She decided to camp here, pitching her tent near a grove of trees at the meadow's edge. After setting up camp, she hung her food and scented items in a bear-proof container from a high branch, following all the park's guidelines. As dusk fell, Emma cooked a simple meal on her portable stove and enjoyed the serenity of the meadow. The setting sun painted the peaks in hues of orange and pink, and she felt a deep sense of peace. Before turning in for the night, she double-checked her gear and ensured her bear spray was within reach. The mistake happened in the quiet hours of the early morning. Emma awoke to the sound of rustling near her tent. Groggy and disoriented, she unzipped the tent slightly and peered outside. The meadow was bathed in pale moonlight, and she spotted movement near the tree where her food was stored. A large grizzly bear stood on its hind legs, swiping at the container. Emma's heart raced as she froze, her breath shallow. The bear, failing to access the container, turned its attention to the tent. Emma panicked. Instead of remaining silent and allowing the bear to lose interest, she grabbed her backpack, which still contained a granola bar she had forgotten to store. The scent, though faint, was enough to draw the bear's attention. It growled, advancing toward the tent with deliberate steps. Emma scrambled for her bear spray, but in her panic, she fumbled and dropped it. The bear swiped at the tent, its claws tearing through the fabric. Emma bolted from the opening, leaving the backpack behind. She ran toward the grove of trees, hoping to climb to safety, but the bear's speed was overwhelming. It charged, knocking her to the ground with a force that left her breathless. A group of hikers camping on the other side of the meadow heard the commotion. They emerged from their tents, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The bear growled and roared, its massive frame illuminated by the beams. The hikers shouted and banged pots, trying to scare the animal away. One of them, a man named Caleb, grabbed his bear spray and advanced cautiously. The bear, startled by the noise and light, released Emma and turned toward the approaching hikers. Caleb fired a burst of bear spray, hitting the animal's face. The bear roared in anger, retreating into the forest. The hikers rushed to Emma, who lay motionless on the ground. Her injuries were severe, deep claw marks raking her torso and legs, and her breathing was shallow. Caleb and another hiker, Maria, administered first aid as best they could, using their shirts to staunch the bleeding. Another member of the group used a satellite phone to contact park rangers, relaying their location and the urgency of the situation. The wait for help was agonizing, each passing minute stretching into an eternity. By dawn, a rescue team arrived, their approach heralded by the sound of helicopter blades cutting through the crisp morning air. Emma was airlifted to a nearby hospital, where she underwent emergency surgery. Despite the efforts of the medical team, her injuries proved too extensive. Emma succumbed to her wounds later that day, her life cut short by a single mistake. The hikers who witnessed the attack were left shaken, but determined to honor Emma's memory by sharing her story. The park rangers, after assessing the incident, located and tranquilized the bear, relocating it to a more remote area of the park. They emphasized that the bear's actions were not predatory, but a response to hunger and the scent of food in Emma's backpack. Emma's death sent ripples through the outdoor community, sparking discussions about safety in bear country and the importance of vigilance. Her story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how even a small oversight can have devastating consequences in the wild. The hikers who tried to save Emma stayed connected, their shared experience forging an unbreakable bond. Caleb and Maria became vocal advocates for wilderness education, using their platform to promote awareness about wildlife behavior and human responsibility. The park, while implementing stricter guidelines, maintained its role as a haven for those seeking the beauty and challenge of the natural world. Emma's legacy endured through the stories told by those who knew her and the lessons learned from her tragic encounter. For those who ventured into Glacier National Park, her memory served as both a warning and an inspiration, a testament to the power of nature and the delicate balance between adventure and caution. In the fall of 2008, a team of forest rangers in Canada's Banff National Park embarked on a routine patrol deep into the backcountry. The group, consisting of 4 experienced rangers and 2 seasonal recruits, was tasked with assessing trail conditions and ensuring wildlife safety in a remote region frequented by grizzly bears. The team included veteran ranger Michael, the leader with decades of field experience, Clara, a wildlife biologist, Trevor, a rescue specialist, Danielle and Liam, the eager recruits, and Grace, a communications officer responsible for documenting the patrol. The journey began under clear skies. The rangers hiked through thick pine forests, crossed glacial streams, and navigated steep inclines. They carried bear spray, satellite radios, and emergency kits, their training and preparation a testament to the dangers of the wilderness. Over the first 2 days, they noted increased bear activity, fresh tracks on trails, claw marks on trees, and a carcass of a deer near a riverbank, likely the remnants of a recent kill. On the 3rd day, the team reached a remote meadow surrounded by cliffs and dense underbrush. The area was breathtaking, its open expanse framed by towering peaks. Grace set up her camera to capture the scenery, while Michael and Clara marked waypoints on the map. The recruits practiced setting up a perimeter and reviewed their protocols for handling wildlife encounters. The group's camaraderie and confidence belied the looming threat. That evening, the rangers pitched their tents near a stream at the edge of the meadow. After a dinner of dehydrated meals, they secured their food in bear-proof containers and hung them high in a tree. The fire crackled as they shared stories and reviewed the day's findings. The forest, alive with nocturnal sounds, seemed peaceful. In the middle of the night, a loud rustling jolted Michael awake. He grabbed his flashlight and scanned the perimeter. The beam landed on a massive grizzly bear near the tree holding their food containers. The animal's sheer size was imposing, its fur shimmering in the moonlight. Michael's sharp intake of breath woke Clara, who quickly roused the others. The bear, undeterred by the human's presence, growled and pawed at the tree. Trevor grabbed his bear spray while Michael instructed the team to remain calm and stay together. The bear's frustration grew as it failed to reach the containers. It turned its attention to the tents, its growls deepening. The bear charged toward the tents, its powerful strides scattering gear and supplies. The rangers shouted and waved their arms, hoping to drive it away. Michael fired a warning shot from a flare gun, the bright flash briefly startling the animal. But the bear, driven by hunger and territorial instincts, did not retreat. It lunged at Liam, who had tripped while trying to grab his pack. The bear's claws raked across his back, leaving deep wounds. Clara and Trevor fired bursts of bear spray, the orange mist enveloping the animal's face. The bear roared, shaking its head before retreating a few paces. Grace and Danielle pulled Liam to safety, their hands trembling as they applied pressure to his wounds. The bear paced at the edge of the camp, growling and swiping at the ground. The Rangers regrouped near the fire, forming a defensive line with their bear spray canisters and flares. The standoff lasted for what felt like hours. The bear's persistence was relentless, its dark eyes glinting in the firelight. As dawn approached, the bear made another charge. This time it targeted Trevor, who had moved to retrieve a first aid kit. The bear's claws tore through his jacket, and he fell backward, narrowly avoiding a fatal blow. Michael and Clara fired simultaneous bursts of bear spray, driving the animal back once more. The grizzly roared in frustration before retreating into the forest, its growls fading into the distance. The team wasted no time. They packed their remaining gear and prepared to evacuate. Liam's injuries were severe and Trevor's shoulder was dislocated. Clara and Grace fashioned a stretcher using tent poles and fabric, while Michael radioed for assistance. The Rangers began the arduous trek toward a ranger station, several miles away. The journey was grueling. The uneven terrain tested their endurance, and every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves heightened their anxiety. Michael led the way, his rifle ready, while Clara monitored Liam's condition. Grace and Danielle took turns carrying the stretcher with Trevor, their faces etched with determination. By midday, the group reached a ridgeline overlooking the valley. The ranger station was visible in the distance, a small wooden structure nestled among the trees. The sight renewed their spirits, and they quickened their pace. However, the bear reappeared, its massive form emerging from the underbrush. The Rangers froze, their breath catching as the animal growled and advanced. Michael fired another flare, the bright light momentarily disorienting the bear. The team formed a defensive circle, their bear spray canisters raised. The grizzly paced and growled, its movements deliberate. Clara shouted for the team to stand firm, her voice steady despite the tension. The bear charged again, its claws raking the ground as it closed the distance. Michael fired a warning shot into the air, and Clara unleashed a burst of spray. The combination of noise and chemicals finally drove the bear back. It roared one last time before disappearing into the forest for good. The Rangers reached the station by late afternoon. A rescue team arrived shortly after, providing medical care to Liam and Trevor. Both were airlifted to a nearby hospital, where they received treatment for their injuries. The remaining Rangers, though exhausted, provided a detailed account of the attack to park officials. The bear was later tracked and relocated to a more remote area of the park. Wildlife experts determined that its aggression stemmed from hunger and the pressures of an encroaching human presence in its habitat. The incident prompted discussions about improving safety measures and minimizing human impact on bear territory. For the Rangers, the experience was a sobering reminder of the wilderness's unpredictability and the importance of preparation. Michael continued his work with renewed vigilance, sharing his story to educate others about wildlife safety. Clara became an advocate for conservation, emphasizing the delicate balance between humans and nature. Grace's documentation of the attack and its aftermath raised awareness about the challenges faced by park rangers. The bear attack in Banff National Park became a tale of survival and resilience, a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of nature's raw power. For those who lived it, the memory of that harrowing encounter served as both a cautionary lesson and a profound reminder of the untamed beauty of the wild. In the spring of 2022, Ethan Walker, an experienced outdoorsman, set out on a solo trek through the remote wilderness of Alaska's Denali National Park. The trip was meant to be a personal challenge, a week-long expedition to test his endurance and survival skills. Ethan meticulously planned his route, ensuring he had enough supplies, safety equipment, and detailed maps to navigate the rugged terrain. Friends and family had voiced their concerns about his solo journey, but Ethan's confidence in his abilities outweighed their fears. The first few days of the trek were invigorating. Ethan moved through dense forests, crossed icy streams, and climbed rocky ridges that offered breathtaking views of snow-capped peaks. He encountered moose grazing in the meadows, spotted eagles soaring overhead, and photographed the vibrant wildflowers dotting the landscape. Each night he set up camp in secluded spots, hanging his food and scented items in bear-proof containers high in trees. By the fourth day, the weather had shifted. Clouds gathered, and the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. Ethan pressed on, determined to reach a remote valley that few hikers ventured into. The trail became more challenging as the forest grew denser, the underbrush tangling around his legs. Despite the change in conditions, Ethan remained alert, his bear spray always within reach. The mistake came late in the afternoon. Exhausted from the day's hike, Ethan decided to set up camp near a stream that meandered through the valley. The area was beautiful, but risky, its proximity to water making it a likely spot for wildlife. He secured his food in a nearby tree, but left his backpack outside his tent, unaware that a few crumbs from an earlier snack lingered inside. As night fell, the forest came alive with sounds. The rustling of leaves, the distant howl of wolves, and the gurgling of the stream. Ethan lay in his tent, lulled by the symphony of nature. He drifted off to sleep, unaware of the danger approaching. In the early hours of the morning, a loud sniffing sound woke him. He froze, his heart pounding as he realized the noise was coming from just outside his tent. Peering through the fabric, he saw the massive silhouette of a grizzly bear. The animal's nose was pressed against his backpack, its claws digging into the fabric. The faint scent of food had drawn the bear to his camp. Ethan reached for his bear spray, but before he could act, the bear swiped at the tent. Its claws tore through the fabric, narrowly missing him. He scrambled out of the opening and ran toward a cluster of boulders, shouting and waving his arms in an attempt to scare the bear. The animal growled, its eyes fixed on him, and charged. The first swipe knocked Ethan to the ground. Pain shot through his arm as the bear's claws raked his shoulder. He sprayed a burst of bear spray, the orange mist hitting the animal's face. The bear roared, shaking its head, but its aggression didn't waver. It swiped again, tearing through Ethan's jacket and leaving deep gashes across his chest. Ethan rolled behind a boulder, clutching his bear spray as he tried to catch his breath. The bear paced nearby, growling and swiping at the rocks. Ethan's mind raced. He knew he couldn't outrun the animal and needed a distraction. He grabbed a stick and threw it toward the stream, the splash drawing the bear's attention momentarily. Using the distraction, he climbed higher onto the boulders, his adrenaline pushing him forward despite the pain. The bear returned, growling and clawing at the rocks. Ethan fired another burst of spray, hitting the bear's nose. This time, the animal retreated slightly, pacing at the base of the boulders. The standoff continued as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. Unbeknownst to Ethan, a group of hikers was camped a mile away. They had heard the bear's growls and Ethan's shouts and decided to investigate. Armed with bear spray and flare guns, they approached cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the early morning gloom. When they reached the scene, they saw Ethan perched on the boulders, blood staining his clothes, and the bear pacing below. The hikers acted quickly. One fired a flare into the air, the bright light startling the bear. Another fired a second flare toward the animal, driving it further back. The bear growled one last time before retreating into the forest, its massive frame disappearing among the trees. The hikers climbed to Ethan, assessing his injuries. His shoulder and chest were badly wounded, and he was losing blood. Using supplies from their first aid kits, they bandaged his wounds and gave him water. Ethan, though weak, managed to thank them with a nod. The group knew they needed to get Ethan to safety. They fashioned a makeshift stretcher using their trekking poles and jackets, carefully securing him before beginning the grueling trek back to the nearest ranger station. The journey was slow and arduous. the uneven terrain and Ethan's condition testing their endurance. They moved cautiously, aware that the bear could return. By midday, they reached the station, a small wooden structure nestled at the edge of the forest. Rangers immediately provided medical attention and radioed for a helicopter to transport Ethan to a hospital. The hikers recounted the attack, their voices filled with both fear and relief. Ethan underwent surgery to repair his wounds and began a long recovery. The bear was later tracked by wildlife officials, who determined that its behavior was likely driven by hunger and the scent of food in Ethan's backpack. The incident prompted renewed calls for education about safety in bear country and the importance of strict food storage practices. For Ethan, the experience was life-changing. Though his physical scars healed, the memory of the attack remained vivid. He returned to the outdoors with a newfound respect for the wilderness and its unpredictable power. The hikers who saved him stayed in touch, their shared experience forging a lasting bond. Together they used their story to raise awareness about coexistence with wildlife and the risks of venturing into untamed landscapes. The bear attack in Denali became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how a single mistake can have devastating consequences. For Ethan and his rescuers, it was also a story of survival, resilience, and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of nature's raw power. In the summer of 2017, a scientific expedition set out to explore the remote tundra of Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The team consisted of 7 members, each an expert in their field. Dr. Margaret Kane, a renowned ecologist and team leader. Alan Hayes, a wildlife photographer. Sophia Martinez, a botanist. Ryan Beck, a field medic. Twins Eric and Evan, experienced mountaineers and logistics coordinators. And Laura Nash, a geologist studying the region's unique formations. Their goal was to study the effects of climate change on the fragile ecosystem, documenting shifts in vegetation, wildlife behavior, and glacial retreat. The expedition began with promise. The team traveled by bush plane to a remote drop-off point, from which they hiked into the untouched wilderness. The tundra stretched endlessly, its undulating landscape dotted with wildflowers, meandering rivers, and distant snow-capped peaks. Wildlife sightings were frequent, caribou migrating in herds, musk oxen grazing on sparse grasses, and golden eagles soaring high above. The beauty of the Arctic inspired awe and a sense of purpose among the group. By the 3rd day, the team established a base camp near a glacial stream. The area was chosen for its proximity to key research sites and its relative safety, though signs of bear activity, claw marks on trees and fresh tracks in the soft earth, reminded them of the ever-present danger. Margaret stressed the importance of maintaining bear safety protocols, securing food in airtight containers, storing them away from the tents, and carrying bear spray at all times. On the 5th day, the team split into smaller groups to cover more ground. Margaret and Sophia headed north to survey vegetation changes along the stream, while Alan and Laura ventured west to photograph glacial formations. Ryan and the twins remained at camp to organize supplies and prepare for the next day's excursion. The day passed uneventfully, the researchers immersed in their work. As evening approached, the groups reconvened at camp. The air grew colder, and a light drizzle began to fall. The team gathered around a small fire, sharing findings and planning the next phase of their research. The mood was light, their camaraderie strong, as they marveled at the resilience of the Arctic's flora and fauna. Shortly after midnight, a low growl broke the silence. Margaret, who had been reviewing notes in her tent, froze. She unzipped the tent slightly and peered into the darkness. The beam of her flashlight revealed a massive grizzly bear at the edge of the camp. The animal's fur glistened with rain, its dark eyes scanning the tents. It sniffed the air, drawn by the faint scent of food. Margaret quickly alerted the others. who emerged from their tents armed with bear spray and noise-making tools. The bear growled again, advancing toward the camp. Alan, attempting to distract it, banged a pot against a rock, but the sound only seemed to agitate the animal. The bear swiped at one of the food containers, its claws effortlessly puncturing the heavy-duty material. The team's efforts to deter the bear escalated as it grew bolder. Margaret fired a burst of bear spray, the orange mist enveloping the bear's face. The animal roared in fury, retreating momentarily but remaining a threat. It circled the camp, growling and swiping at the ground, its massive frame looming in the dim firelight. The first attack came suddenly. The bear charged at Eric, who had been standing closest to the fire. It knocked him to the ground with a powerful swipe, its claws tearing through his jacket. Evan and Ryan rushed to his aid, firing bursts of spray and dragging him away. Margaret directed the others to form a defensive line, using noise and light to keep the bear at bay. The bear's aggression was unrelenting. It lunged at Alan, who stumbled backward and dropped his flashlight. Margaret fired another burst of spray, hitting the bear's eyes. The animal roared and retreated a few feet, giving the team a chance to regroup. Ryan worked quickly to tend to Eric's wounds, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. The standoff lasted for hours. The bear paced at the edge of the camp, its growls reverberating through the still night. The team remained huddled together, their bear spray canisters at the ready. Every movement of the bear's massive body sent a wave of tension through the group. As dawn approached, the bear made one final charge. It lunged at Laura, who stood her ground and fired a burst of spray directly into its face. The bear roared in frustration, swiping at the air before retreating into the darkness. The team waited in silence, their breaths visible in the cold air, until they were certain the animal had gone. With first light, the team assessed the damage. The camp was in disarray, their supplies scattered and several tents shredded. Eric's injuries, though serious, were not life-threatening, and Ryan assured the group that he would recover. Margaret decided to abandon the research and focus on evacuation. The team packed what remained of their gear and began the arduous journey back to the drop-off point. The trek was grueling. The uneven terrain and Eric's injuries slowed their progress, and every sound in the wilderness set their nerves on edge. Margaret led the way, her bear spray in hand, while Ryan and Evan supported Eric. The others carried what supplies they could, their movements deliberate and cautious. By late afternoon, the team reached the designated pickup location. Using a satellite phone, Margaret contacted the bush pilot, who assured them he would arrive within hours. The group set up a temporary shelter and kept watch, their fear of the bear's return ever present. The plane arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon, its hum a welcome sound. The team boarded quickly, their exhaustion evident. As the plane lifted off, they looked down at the tundra, its vastness both beautiful and unforgiving. Eric was airlifted to a hospital where he underwent surgery for his injuries. The rest of the team, though physically unscathed, carried the emotional weight of the encounter. The bear was later tracked by wildlife officials, who determined that its aggression was likely due to hunger and environmental stress. The incident prompted renewed discussions about the impacts of climate change on Arctic wildlife and the importance of safety in remote research expeditions. For the team, the experience was transformative. Margaret continued her work, using the encounter to advocate for greater understanding of human-wildlife interactions. Alan's photographs from the trip, including images of the bear, became a powerful tool for raising awareness about conservation. Sophia and Laura, though shaken, returned to their research with a renewed sense of purpose. Eric and Evan, their bond as brothers strengthened, shared their story to educate others about the risks of venturing into the wild. The bear attack in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge became a tale of survival and resilience, a reminder of the raw power of nature and the delicate balance between humanity and the wilderness. For those who lived it, it was a defining moment, a harrowing yet profound chapter that underscored the courage required to navigate the untamed wild. In the summer of 1993, a group of friends set out to explore the rugged wilderness of Montana's Beartooth Mountains. The party consisted of 5 hikers: Sarah, an experienced trail guide; Jake, a geology student fascinated by the area's rock formations; Mia, a botanist cataloging alpine plants; Tom, a seasoned outdoorsman; and Kevin, a photographer eager to capture the untouched beauty of the backcountry. Their goal was to complete a challenging 40-mile loop over 6 days, crossing alpine meadows, steep ridges, and glacial valleys. The trek began with clear skies and a sense of adventure. The hikers moved steadily along the trail, their packs heavy with provisions, but their spirits high. They passed through dense pine forests and crossed rushing streams, stopping occasionally to marvel at the breathtaking scenery. Each evening, they set up camp in secluded areas, following strict safety protocols to avoid attracting wildlife. Food was stored in bear-proof containers, and the group always carried bear spray. By the 3rd day, they had reached a remote basin surrounded by towering peaks. The area was pristine, its wildflowers in full bloom and its streams teeming with trout. Kevin set up his camera to photograph the landscape, while Mia collected samples of rare plants. The group decided to camp here, charmed by the basin's tranquility and isolation. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the group gathered around a small fire. They cooked a simple meal, their laughter mingling with the crackling of the flames. The stars emerged one by one, casting a silvery glow over the mountains. It was a night that seemed almost magical, a perfect moment in the wilderness. The attack came in the early hours of the morning. Sarah was the first to wake, startled by the sound of heavy footsteps and the low growl of a bear. She unzipped her tent just enough to peer outside and saw the massive silhouette of a grizzly near the food storage tree. The bear's powerful frame and deliberate movements sent a chill through her. She quickly alerted the others, who scrambled out of their tents, their bear spray and flashlights in hand. The bear, drawn by the scent of food, swiped at the tree, its claws gouging the bark. The sound of the hikers' voices and the beam of their flashlights caught its attention. It growled and turned toward them, its dark eyes glinting in the faint light. Sarah, trying to maintain calm, fired a burst of bear spray as the bear advanced. The orange mist hit its face, causing it to roar and back away momentarily. The reprieve was brief. The bear's aggression escalated as it charged the group, swiping at Kevin, who had been standing closest. Its claws tore through his jacket, leaving deep gashes on his arm. Tom and Jake fired their bear spray, driving the animal back. Mia and Sarah helped Kevin retreat to the edge of the camp, his injuries severe but not life-threatening. The bear circled the camp, growling and pacing. The group formed a tight defensive line, their bear spray canisters raised. The tension was palpable, every movement of the bear sending a wave of fear through the hikers. It lunged again, this time targeting Tom, who swung his trekking pole at its snout. The impact startled the bear, causing it to retreat a few feet. As dawn broke, the bear finally retreated into the forest, its massive form disappearing among the trees. The group quickly assessed the damage. Kevin's injuries were serious but manageable, and the camp was in disarray, with supplies scattered and several tents destroyed. Sarah decided they needed to abandon the trek and head back to the trailhead, a grueling 2-day hike. The journey was arduous. Kevin, though injured, insisted on walking with assistance, his determination inspiring the others. Mia and Sarah alternated supporting him, while Tom and Jake took turns scouting ahead and carrying the remaining gear. Every sound in the forest set their nerves on edge, the possibility of the bear's return ever present. By midday, the group reached a high ridge that offered a clear view of the valley below. They paused to rest, their exhaustion evident, but their resolve unshaken. Kevin's wounds were cleaned and bandaged again, and the group refocused on reaching safety. As they descended into the valley, the bear reappeared. Its growls echoed through the forest as it emerged from the underbrush, its dark eyes fixed on the hikers. The group formed a defensive line, their bear spray ready. The bear advanced cautiously, growling and sniffing the air. Sarah fired a warning burst of spray, hitting the ground in front of the bear. It hesitated, growling louder but not retreating. Tom grabbed a flare from his pack and lit it, the bright light and sharp crackling startling the bear. It roared, swiping at the air before finally retreating into the forest. The group waited in silence, their breaths ragged, until they were certain the animal was gone. The hikers pressed on, their pace quickened by adrenaline and fear. They reached the trailhead by late afternoon the following day, their relief palpable. Park rangers stationed there provided immediate assistance, treating Kevin's injuries and documenting the attack. The bear was later tracked by wildlife officials, who determined that its behavior was likely driven by hunger and environmental stress. The experience left a lasting mark on the group. Kevin's arm healed with time, though the scars remained as a permanent reminder. Sarah continued leading hikes, her respect for the wilderness deepened by the ordeal. Mia and Jake used the encounter to raise awareness about the challenges of human-wildlife coexistence, while Tom's focus shifted to educating others about safety in bear country. The bear attack in the Beartooth Mountains became a cautionary tale shared among outdoor enthusiasts as a reminder of nature's unpredictability and power. For those who survived, it was a defining moment, a harrowing yet transformative experience that underscored the strength of the human spirit and the delicate balance of life in the wild. In the winter of 1971, a group of 5 friends sought refuge in a remote cabin deep within the Bitterroot Mountains of Montana. The cabin, a weathered but sturdy structure built by trappers decades ago, was perched on a ridge overlooking a frozen river. Surrounded by dense pine forests and towering peaks, it was the perfect escape from their city lives. The group consisted of Tom, an experienced outdoorsman and the unofficial leader, Claire, a biology student eager to document the local wildlife, David, a teacher with a penchant for adventure, Susan, an artist inspired by the wilderness, and Michael, a novice camper drawn by the allure of the backcountry. The trip began with high spirits. The friends snowshoed to the cabin, hauling supplies on sleds. Inside, they found a single room with a stone fireplace, bunk beds, and a table. They spent their days exploring the surrounding area, snowshoeing through the forest and tracking animal prints in the snow. Claire pointed out signs of wildlife, deer, foxes, and the occasional bear track, though the season's deep freeze made an encounter unlikely. On the 4th day, the weather turned. Heavy snow began to fall, blanketing the landscape and cutting visibility to a few feet. The group decided to stay close to the cabin, chopping wood and reinforcing the door and windows against the storm. They felt safe within the thick wooden walls, the fire crackling and the smell of stew filling the room. As night fell, the wind howled through the trees, rattling the shutters. The group huddled around the fireplace, their laughter and conversation a comforting contrast to the storm outside. Claire reviewed her notes on wildlife patterns, and Susan sketched the cabin's interior by firelight. They went to bed late, lulled by the warmth of the fire and the camaraderie of the group. In the middle of the night, a sound shattered the silence. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the cabin, followed by the thud of something heavy against the door. Tom was the first to wake, grabbing a flashlight and his rifle. The others stirred, their faces pale with confusion and fear. Another thud rattled the door, and the growl deepened. Through the frost-covered window, Tom saw the massive silhouette of a grizzly bear. The bear, drawn by the scent of food, pawed at the door, its claws splintering the wood. The group scrambled to action, blocking the door with the table and grabbing whatever makeshift weapons they could find. Tom fired a warning shot through a crack in the door, the sound deafening in the confined space. The bear roared and retreated a few steps, but did not leave. The animal circled the cabin, growling and swiping at the walls. The group remained huddled inside, their breaths visible in the cold air as the fire dwindled. David fed the flames with the last of the kindling, while Claire and Susan searched for anything to reinforce the door. Michael, though inexperienced, stood ready with a hunting knife, his fear palpable. The bear's persistence grew. It lunged at the shuttered window, its claws tearing through the wood. Tom fired again, striking the animal's shoulder. The bear roared in pain but continued its assault, its massive frame shaking the cabin. The group's unity and quick thinking kept them alive, but their situation grew dire as the bear's attacks escalated. As dawn approached, the bear breached the door, shoving aside the barricade. The group retreated to the loft, a narrow space accessible by a ladder. From above, they watched in terror as the bear entered the cabin, its growls reverberating through the room. It tore through their supplies, scattering food and smashing furniture. Tom fired one last shot, hitting the bear's chest. The animal roared and swiped at the ladder, its claws splintering the wood. The group's survival hinged on their ability to outlast the bear. Claire threw a heavy blanket over the animal's head, momentarily disorienting it. David and Susan used the distraction to drop heavy objects from the loft, driving the bear back toward the door. The combined efforts of the group finally forced the animal to retreat into the storm. The group waited in silence, their hearts pounding as they listened for the bear's return. When the first light of day broke, they descended cautiously. The cabin was in ruins, their supplies destroyed, and the door hanging from its hinges. Tom and Claire assessed the damage, while David and Michael gathered what little remained of their gear. The group decided to abandon the cabin and make their way to a ranger station several miles away. The journey was perilous, the deep snow and freezing temperatures testing their endurance. They moved cautiously, their eyes scanning the forest for any sign of the bear. Tom led the way, his rifle ready, while Claire kept track of their route. Michael, though shaken, carried what supplies they had salvaged. By midday they reached the station, a small wooden structure perched on a ridge. The rangers provided medical care and listened intently as the group recounted their ordeal. A search team was dispatched to locate the bear, which was later tracked and tranquilized. Wildlife officials determined that the animal's aggression was likely driven by hunger and the harsh winter conditions. The experience left a lasting impact on the group. Tom, though hardened by years in the wilderness, admitted it was the most harrowing encounter of his life. Claire used her observations to write a paper on human-wildlife interactions, advocating for better education and preparation for those venturing into bear country. Susan's sketches of the cabin and the bear's attack became a poignant reminder of their survival, while Michael, despite his inexperience, found a new respect for the wild. The bear attack at the Bitterroot cabin became a cautionary tale shared among outdoor enthusiasts, a story of resilience and teamwork in the face of nature's raw power. For the group, it was a defining moment, a harrowing yet transformative experience that underscored the delicate balance between humanity and the wilderness.